prove beyond reasonable doubt to adjudge such cases. Cool. Context for motion number 3. An adversarial lawyer believes their duty is to advocate for their client's interest as zealously as possible and believe that they are not morally responsible for either the ends or means of representation, provided that they are lawful. Cool? The second is a moral activist lawyer who sees forwarding social justice as their primary duty. They aim to improve substantive justice through public interest lawyering, law reform activities, and counseling clients to act morally. Any clarification on the context? So with that as your context, motion 3 reads, this house is an up-and-coming lawyer from a minority background would choose to be an adversarial lawyer instead of a moral activist lawyer. Time now is 12:20. Debate starts exactly at 12:50.
For the grand finals, I welcome everyone to the sixth Iudc and the grand finale for it. I hope everyone enjoys it here. So I'll just pass over the mic to the panelists so they can introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, Narayan here, no preference, good luck.
Hi everyone, I'm Samridhi, prefer pronounce she, her. All the best for the debate.
Hello, I'm Preeta Mona and my preferred gender pronouns are she.
Kaushik, no preferred pronouns, all the best for them.
Thank you everyone. I request everyone to give a cheer for our panelists as well. And now our participants, I want you guys to introduce yourselves, the government and the opposition.
My name is Aditya and I will be serving as the Prime Minister for today's debate. My preferred pronouns are he and him.
My name is Ujan. I'm the Deputy Prime Minister. My preferred pronouns are he and him. I am Pratyush. I am the government whip for today and my preferred pronouns are he and him.
Hello everyone. My name is Gyanesh. My preferred pronouns are he and him.
Hello everyone, my name is Vaishnavi. My preferred pronouns are she and her.
Hello everyone, I'm Samridhi. My preferred gender pronouns are she and her. I'll be going as the opposition.
I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Panel, we have to understand that the world we live in, there is a chain between when the crime actually takes place and the mechanism of adjudication that takes place. There is a massive chain that exists. Now, when we look at places with high crimes against minorities, first of all, places with high crimes means that there are specific geographical locations, specifically defined locations that have a higher number of crimes against these minorities. And high crimes against minorities is a large number of crimes that are taking place on the basis of gender, caste and sex, and that is a very important thing that we have to consider today. So our model is establishes the balance of probability as the proper adjudicating mechanism for this, as opposed to beyond reasonable doubt. Another important thing that we would like to build up is the fact that the responsibility of whenever something is being adjudicated, the justice systems, there are twofold responsibility. Number one is to impact social justice, to benefit social justice, and the other impact is to bring order to society as well. That is a practical perspective, the practical burden that exists on the judicial system. Now I would like to look at, coming back, there is a chain between the crimes and the crimes that happen, and when it goes to adjudication, there is an entire policing system that exists in the middle. This policing system is responsible for the very collection of proofs, the collection of evidence, the filing of FIRs that take place before this particular thing goes to court, and this is a very essential part of our debate. Now, their model on their side of the house, which prefers beyond reasonable doubt as an adjudication mechanism, is, we have to understand, it is already the status quo. When it comes to adjudication of crimes beyond reasonable doubt, is the current status that is used, and it has failed. Why is it already failed? Because they already exist in these places with high crimes against minorities, and yet it does not affect. That is the very reason we are debating this motion today. Again, now I would like to put up the model that our side of the house presumes. The our model basically says, it agrees with the motion that more serious the crime, the less likely it is to occur. We are not flouting the principles of justice. They're essentially important. What we are basically saying is the fact that there is no need to prove in our model of the house. Sometimes there a particular part which raises some little doubt that is required. However, but there is no proof available for that for various reasons. That should not be a hindrance to justice for people of minorities when they are subject to high crimes in these places. What we also have to very importantly see that these are specific geographical locations, and what our model does not prescribe this system to be permanent. It is temporary, and I'll say how. Because it is against it is subject to places with high crimes. As soon as the crime rates reduce, the very motion, the very premise is gone, and therefore the entire system is not required. It is a dynamic system. It is not a permanent blanket system that has to be imposed everywhere. That is a very important part. We are also against the raising of frivolous cases. We are against frivolity in a court of law. We prescribe to the principle that the two odds will be weighed. It is more likely than not. It is not the fact that the other side has no option to bring up their side of the case. It is just the fact in the adjudication mechanism between these two, in these two cases. One, if there is a small doubt that is not questioned. However, if there is we are saying beyond reasonable doubt. If we are not against there being doubts being raised, if there are doubts, it is up to the discretion of the judiciary to do so. We are saying beyond reasonable doubt cannot be used as a defense for the people who are committing crimes against minorities, and especially only in places where high crimes are committed. Now, what we also have to the burden that exists on our side of the house is when comparing our model to the other model. Our model actually solves the high crimes in places against minorities, and their model doesn't, which is the main primary burden of this entire debate, which we have to prove. Now, going over to my arguments. Panel for specialized circumstances, we need specialized mechanisms as well. In places with high crimes against minorities, it is a specialized circumstance. The judicial justice system has failed. What we have to understand is when the justice system has failed, therefore there has to be a new idea that has to be introduced to actually tackle that particular problem. Otherwise, we will be circling back and forth. Yes,
you said your model would reduce the high class crimes. How?
By taking these people who are using reasonable doubt as a defense and leaving and are still onto the streets, they are going back, they are now being sent to prison, and that is how this model works, by taking these people off the streets who are trying to use the defense of beyond reasonable doubt for them. And this is again only subject to places with high crimes. Now, continuing my argument, these specialized mechanisms are necessary because the status quo has failed. Their model has failed to reduce the high crimes against minorities in these places, and therefore we need a new model that is essentially important. Many times in history, this has happened that when there is a particular problem that emerges, there are specialized mechanisms used which are not necessarily conventional in the universal context, but do apply to that particular context, and therefore this is what we are talking about. Now I would like to bring in my second argument. The second argument is that we are assuming that the entire policing system, that their model assumes that the judges and the adjudication system receives absolutely perfect data and intelligence and proof on everybody. However, there is a massive chain that exists between the two, which is called the policing system. And panel, you have to understand the very reason that high crimes are happening against minorities in certain places is because of the fact that the policing system has failed in these issues. And why that happens is because the very fact is that the majority owns these institutions, the majorities control these institutions. Yes.
So instead of trying to better the policing system, you're trying to change the adjudicating system altogether.
The policing system cannot be changed because of the very fact that the majority is current. These are particular to these places itself, and they has failed here. The system has failed here because of the policing system, and therefore it has to be rectified at an adjudicatory level. Because we are here talking about the deliverance of justice. Now, coming back to my argument, because there is a majority in play here, the entire system fails, and therefore the very fact is that no proper proof, no proper evidence is given to, in fact, actually satisfy that beyond reasonable doubt factor, and therefore anytime something goes wrong, the criminal system can be abused and the criminal system can be contaminated and be manipulated for the benefit of the majority. We have to understand that in places with high crimes against minorities, there is a mass. The policing system is also involved. The mechanisms that are there are also involved, and sometimes it is incredibly difficult to get proof of all these things because the persons getting proof are responsible for these very same crimes, and therefore we are very proud to propose in this house. Thank you.
Pointer here, do not take or ask POIs after the 6th minute. So yes, and I invite the LO to further their case from side opposition. Here. Speaker, whenever ready, give a countdown.
Starting my speech. 3, 2, 1. Panel, crime is a very serious and a very grave thing. But with crime, there is also a very important aspect of social justice. Something which was completely missing by the side government. They come here and they tell me they're going to reduce crime, never telling me how. They come here and they forget about the most important, if not equally important individual, which is the accused. How the accused is going to be affected in this particular case was not at all dealt by the side government. Here's how my speech is going to go. First of all, I shall be tackling with a few rebuttals to the side government. I shall gradually be moving towards my constructives. I shall be talking about fundamental rights, and I shall be talking about stigmatization. First of all, the government here comes and tells me that places with high crimes, we understand that this is a context, but let me tell you the impact that these places are going to be, that are going to have on this particular scheme of things. Because in these places, they are affected by high crimes, the moral is going to affect the law. We cannot let morals affect the proper procedure laid down by law. Let me make you understand how will it help it, how will it actually affect it in any way or the other. Because in this context it offers a high crime rate, high rate is going to lead to a conditional phase when even innocents are going to be conducted through the trial and most probably be accused because of the balance of probabilities, given the ease of access of that particular process. Why more individuals who are innocent will be convicted in this particular case? Because there is a high crime rate. People think that they need to change crime, and as per the government, the thing to do it is by replacing the entire method of adjudication, which has not been changed till this date. By doing this, people will have a moral suasion of just getting in criminals, anybody who they find in, and let them go through this process of adjudication and just make it sort of, they think that justice is going to be if the accused just gets the sentence, even if it's correct or not. They are looking towards serving justice in a swift manner without following the due procedure of law. It's basically quality versus quantity. Now let us understand, they talked about social justice. Social justice through the viewpoint of a society. We look for finding the truth. We look for upholding the scales of social justice while assessing the metric of truth. But what do we exactly mean by the absolute truth? The absolute truth is not swayed or present at one part involved in the entire process. Just because the accused is getting into behind the bars due to this ease of process which is being replaced by them through balance of probabilities and not through balance of reasonable doubt, it's going to be a very problematic situation for the other party, which is the accused as well. We, panel, are living in a democratic society. And inside a democratic society, it's very important to understand that they have failed to recognize one very important thing known as the fundamental rights. Nothing was talked about the fundamental rights and nothing was talked about serving justice for both the parties, that is, serving justice to the society at the whole level. Then again, they come here and then they tell me, how will you ensure crime? That's a question to the cow. How will you ensure crime? By replacing the system of adjudication. Panel, it's very important to understand it's a systematic problem needed to be dealt in a systematic way. Merely changing the process of adjudication might have a very small impact in this particular debate and this particular motion. How will you solve the problem has not been explained at all by the side government. They come here and then they tell me that we are going to bring in this particular model for a temporary period of time. Okay, fine. But why do we need this model? What is the essence of this model? You never come here and tell me why the existing model is bad. You come here, you tell me assertions that it is bad. Why? You come here and you tell me it's good. Why? I never get a single thing. Moving on to my constructives, let's talk about fundamental rights. As we all know about fundamental rights, individuals possess fundamental rights only by the virtue of them being born as individuals. Just by the basis of that, like there is a segregation of a citizen and a non-citizen, but just by the virtue of being an individual, you are getting fundamental rights. In the context of India, the Article 21, the right to life, gives you to do whatever you want to do until you go against some set specific standards, and you can only be curbed of this right when it goes against some set specific standards, and only through the procedure set by law, which essentially they are trying to change. The current and the existing set of laws which are existing in the world in which we are living, as you already know, have been resting since age and age, since time and time, on the factor beyond reasonable doubt. Let me tell you why. One big point. It will lead to the stigmatization of the victim if the entire process of adjudication is replaced and changed with balance of probability later. When a person is accused of a crime, the doubts begin to ponder. He's not treated as a normal person. Since the beginning of the process, he has been induced as an accused. And if you are going to follow this particular process, through which the ease of access is going to provide you, with an easy way of just putting him into the bars, behind the bars, is going to create a detrimental effect, is going to create stigmatization, is going to be very heavy, not only intrinsically in the terms of the fundamental rights of the accused, but also in terms of how he is treated in a general society. Just because the condition and the context requires to solve crime, you do not change the process of adjudication. You try to fix the systematic thing through a systematic measure. It's also a very known fact that in cases when somebody is being represented with the public, we are going to look at a very important stakeholder here, which are economically backward stakeholder. More often than not, they are not being able to get their own prosecution. And it's a sad reality, but the government prosecution will not pay a lot of attention because he will also be conditioned in the very same way of just putting the accused behind the bars instead of serving actual justice, which is going to put them in a very bad phase. They will not get a chance to defend themselves by getting a good lawyer because they're economically weak. And they're also going to be cut of the fundamental rights and all of those things because of this change of adjudication which is going to be done. Further constructives shall be elaborated by my DNO as opposition and the leader opposition. I am very proud to oppose. Thank you.
I thank the case from side Gov. Here.
Guys, please be a bit mindful about banging the table, okay? We can't hear the speakers when you're doing it very loudly.
It's going to happen your case only because you're...
Hello, panel, may I begin? I will start my speech. Am I audible? I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Panel, first I'll make a few clarifications about the model which was already said. Next, I will move on to my constructive. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Panel, first a few clarifications on the model, right? When opposition comes up over here and says justice is not served in our side of the house, they're fundamentally wrong when they say that, right? Why is this the case? Because we need to weigh the two models which are being set out in the house, right? They talk about beyond reasonable doubt when there's absolutely no shred of evidence. When there's no shred of evidence against the person, only then you can prosecute someone, right, panel? We say that is simply a metric which you should not discuss, right? When the leader of opposition comes here and says that we didn't say why this model or status quo is per se bad, my Prime Minister's whole constructive is on how there exists a mechanism between the minorities who are being harmed and the judicial system. This whole barrier and mechanism exists between them which stops them from getting this justice. This brings me to why our model is important. I'm again reasserting it. My Prime Minister has told it before that we also have justice happening on our side of the system. But how is this happening? This is simply happening because we are providing balance of probabilities. Yes, explain how it's happening, right? The thing they need to understand is when there is a stronger accusation happening, you also there's a lesser probability that I'll take it after 5th minute. There's a lesser probability that it will be accepted by the court. One. Second, they also need stronger evidence when there's stronger accusations happening, right? They need to understand the judicial system is not going out of existence. It also exists, but only in places where you have the question of reasonable doubt does this balance of principle come in, right? They also need to understand what place is set in, because this place in certain places where high crimes of minorities are happening. We also want to bring it with the notice of the chair that they're place setting the whole debate when they have a whole constructive on fundamental right, and they're telling the fundamental right of life which exists in India. This is existing only in India, panel. The debate is not happening in India, so they're simply not allowed to place set the debate when the whole argument rests on there exist fundamental rights. We need to weigh every single thing in this debate, panel. Let's talk about they spoke about you should better the police system, right? But no model on that, on how they'll simply better the police system, and how the police system, which is composed of people of the majority section of the society, which is composed of we spoke about social justice not being done in our side of the house, right? And the first thing we want you to note is that social justice is not done on their side of the house as well, because in the status quo, high crimes are being conducted against minorities, specifically in these areas, and these areas are the question of the debate, right, panel? Second, we also need to know that the police system and the judicial system has failed. If the police system and judicial system fails in targeting the crimes against minorities, social justice is not being done in this debate, panel. What do we need to know? We need to know whether morals are really affecting how morals are affecting law, like they called it, or whether we are actually trying to provide social justice to the minorities by bringing the necessary changes. Right? They said that it has never been changed in history, so it should never be done again. My Prime Minister walked up here and he said that these are extraordinary circumstances, because throughout history, never has high crimes against minorities been tackled in any manner or whatsoever. There is no existing model by which they will better the police system and manage to tackle the crimes against minority, right? Which is the whole reason for this debate, right? Next, we understand, they said that you should follow due process of law. Well, we're challenging the whole question of law, because law is dynamic, panel. We need to understand that when problems arise in societies, law exists to tackle these said problems, right? Because in the status quo, they haven't given us one benefit on how their model, which is the status quo, is looking after the people, which is looking after the main stakeholders in this debate, which is the minorities, right? They haven't given us how the police system will be better. They haven't given us how justice will be done. They spoke, one whole constructive of theirs was about the accused, panel. We need to understand that wrongful prosecution also happens on their side of the house as well. It is a harm which exists in both sides of the house's, panel. On top of that, we need to understand another layer to this department, that in our side of the house, even though an individual could be wrongfully prosecuted, at the best case, even though there exists, when it only reaches the stage of beyond reasonable doubt, does our system come into play? Only when the court has to show stronger evidence. Even after that, at our worst case, if an individual is prosecuted, we need to understand this happens to be an individual problem. While on their side of the house, when wrongful prosecutions constantly happen against minority, and when the majority are not prosecuted because of the existing mechanisms of police, there is no prosecution happening at all, and this creates a power disbalance in society, where the minorities are not getting the rights, where the minorities are being wrongfully prosecuted, while the majority of the power are running scot-free, right? Finally, I go to my first constructive which I bring forward in this debate is alienation of minorities, right? I already spoke about how minorities are not welcome to the society, or are not as powerful in the society as the majority are, panel. What is important to understand is that as society exists, the whole job of a state, of a judicial system, is to bring parity between people, panel. Why is this parity so important? This parity is extremely important because minorities have the same rights which people talked about, right? They spoke about fundamental rights. Let's not restrict ourselves to India. Let's talk about rights of people in general. People have rights to be treated equally. People have rights to live the same life which a person who oppresses them does. They have right to live free from oppression. They have free to be integrated in the society. Now, how will they be integrated into the society? If you deny them access to justice, you are alienating them from society. How are you alienating them from society? Because when you are not giving them access to justice, one, they are not able to prove crimes happening against them. How is crimes happening against them alienating them from society? One, because we understand the power structures already exist in society, and these power structures are inherently alienating people from society themselves. We talked about the police system, we talked about the whole judicial, we talked about the police system and the state mechanisms often being populated by majority, and when they're populated by majority, there is an inherent oppression happening. On top of this, we need to understand why this motion is being discussed as well, panel. This motion is simply being discussed because high crimes are happening against minorities in certain areas. When high crimes are happening against minorities in certain areas, there is a responsibility of a state, there is a responsibility of the judicial system to ensure that this stops.
Now we understand that how this this was about how power structures are alienating people in themselves. Now we understand that how do we stop them from alienating them from society? We allow them to enjoy the rights which exist in society. One, we allow them to enjoy rights in society. Second, the most important rights which needs to be enjoyed by them is the right to their judicial system and a free right to the judicial system panel, because the oppression which is happening against high crimes. Now, when you're allowing them to get a judicial platform which is not easily accessible to them, because high crime still exists, because there are barriers, when you give them this judicial platform, they're able to get the rights and remedies rectified. They're able to live in the same status as it's fine, I have my time. They're able to live in the same status which other people of the society do. We also need to understand that when people are getting the rights recognized, when they're able to prosecute people who are committing crimes against them, they're living the same lives which other people do, which gives them equal opportunities to grow in society, which allows them to actualize how other people do. What they need to prove, what we also need to understand is that social systems will exist on our side of the house as well. You also will have poverty alleviation schemes. You will also teach them about society, give them education, give them better access to health. What we are giving is a unique benefit which exists on our side of the house, which is allowing the crimes to be deterred, which they have zero engagement with, which is why we are so proud to propose.
Starting speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let us try to understand what is actually happening in this particular scenario. While the government has very conveniently gone and said they want to prove social justice, we're going to try to prove why social justice in their side of the paradigm is not panning out as well as they want it to be. Because they're failing to recognize a couple of more stakeholders that exist in the society. We're going to bring in a couple of stakeholders that we've been harping upon since the beginning of his speech, and trying to prove why the stakeholders we're focusing on also fare a little better, and why social justice is actually ensured on our side of the paradigm more than it is on theirs. Moreover, let us try to understand that the government has come and said that there's a mechanism of adjudication that has to be changed. They said that there's a responsibility to have social justice, right? While they're focusing on social justice of minorities, while they're saying that minorities are being alienated, etc., they're also failing to understand that social justice also exists on the side of the paradigm of criminals, right? So while they're trying to prove that minorities are being alienated, minorities' rights are being affected, they're also failing to understand that criminals' rights are also being affected at the same time. They try to say that minorities, the policing system that is failing is always being there's a power structure that exists in the policing system, right? What we just want to tell to them is that instead of trying to change the adjudicatory system, which is not ensuring how a particular crime will be stopped, we're just trying to propose that maybe changing the policing system might help actually stop alienating the minorities that exist. All we want to say, let us try to understand that just because we're changing the adjudicatory system from balance of probabilities, balance of reasonable doubts, doesn't stop crimes on their side of the paradigm. It doesn't stop crimes against minorities and doesn't stop them from being alienated. But at the same time, what it does is it gives more space for the criminals to be wrongly accused and wrongly be put in jail, henceforth affecting the criminals' rights as well. All we're trying to say is, let's take criminals and victims as a stakeholder in this particular point of view. Criminals in our side of the just because there's a change in adjudicatory system, it doesn't ensure that crimes won't stop, right? But instead changing the policing system, which they're saying that is flawed and failed till now, can actually help. Instead of accepting that it's failed, it has a power structure, we'll try to change the adjudicatory policy. It doesn't work like that. All we're trying to say is that a power structure might also exist in the adjudicatory system. What about that? What if persecutions of wrongfully accused people happen because a power structure exists even in the adjudicatory system, right? So power structure can exist in policing system as well as adjudicatory system. So we cannot ignore that it exists on both sides of the house. They've tried to say that minorities are alienated. Why? Because they're being prejudiced against. Why? Because there's no persecutions happening against them. Just because there's persecutions not happening against them, we cannot try to take out a fast track solution. We cannot just because we want an urgency, we cannot take the easier way out. Because the easier way out here clearly is balance of probabilities, where we don't have to prove innocent till guilty to a larger extent. We just have to prove it to a smaller extent, only so that justice is being served to the minorities, while completely ignoring that criminals are as an equal stakeholder as the minorities are. they try to say that there's no equal opportunities that the minorities are given, right? Minorities are not while minorities are not given equal opportunities, when somebody is wrongfully accused, the stigma in the society prohibits him from also getting an equal opportunity. Let it be to the justice system, let it be to anything. Stigma in the society is bound to actually affect his liberty, his fundamental rights as well. But one of the main things, panel, let us try to understand this. What is happening is, we fail to recognize that minorities can very well misuse their rights. While we're existing in a house where minority rights, there's a lot of crime against minorities, which also there's a bias that is already existing in the adjudicatory system, that crimes are happening. Hence, we should speedily try to recover them, or speedily try to persecute them, right? At the same time, people are not understanding that maybe the minorities' rights are also being misused, and which is also creating a chilling effect on all the other people that exist, which is prohibiting them from exercising their own right. It may not be as serious as it seems, but minorities misusing their rights can very well lead to the fact that people just start criminally persecuting people just for wrongful reasons, just to show that social justice is being served, just to show that minorities are not being alienated in our society. There was a government had come out and say that criminals are still on the streets. Just because criminals are still on the streets, there is innocent people that is still in jail, which we need to understand. Just because you don't want to put criminals out on the street, or people who are wrongfully accused, or people who could be accused out on the street, doesn't mean that you take away everyone who is accused, and through this change of mechanism, through a smaller burden of proof that they have to prove their innocence, you put them behind bars, right? The specialized mechanism that you were talking about can be achieved through both ways. Because in our side of the paradigm, let me tell you, in victims also, the victims will also have to prove their burden heavily, okay? That will ensure that their case is equally as strong as the criminal's case. Because unless they prove it until entirety, then criminals also will not be persecuted, which is balancing both their rights in the same time. Yes.
Can victims, with the police system currently existing, can victims properly prove their point which they have in judicial system?
That's what we're trying to say, that the policing system needs to actually improve. You cannot say that the adjudicatory system is the only way you can prove it, right? If you want to improve, stop crimes from happening against minorities, improve the policing system, ensure that they're getting the justice through policing manners as well, right? You cannot skip the end. You said there's a chain. What happens between the crime and the accused, right? Fix the chain first and then come to the end part. You're not ignoring the chain that is being put, which our paradigm we're saying. All we're trying to say is this urgency that they're saying that minorities are being crimed against, etc., etc. This urgency is creating a swift, fast-track justice that they're trying to understand. But this is not acceptable on our house of the paradigm, because we also have to weigh out that in society, criminals also matter equally, other than their side of the paradigm. We cannot be always trying to say that we need to get a fast-track solution, urgency, there's an easy solution, just because the the crimes are not stopping. All we're trying to say is that the harm on their side of the paradigm is crimes don't stop against minorities in their side, but innocent people might just be accused on their side. That is the harm entirely on their side, just because they're trying to lower down the bar that has been set to prove your innocence, right? On our side of the paradigm, victims have to prove what happened to them equally, as much as, and give an equal opportunity even to the criminals that happened, so that both of them can fare equally in society. So both of them are not stigmatized equally in society, right? They said that access to justice on minorities is not hard. Access to justice to criminals or wrongfully accused people is equally as bad, which we need to tackle by balancing both of them. Social justice also has to be done to criminals, to society at large, as well as to the victims, which you are failing to analyze. The only stakeholder you are focusing on is the victims. Thanks. Very proud of you.
I thank the DLO for their very fine speech. I now invite the Gov to conclude their case from side government. Here. Speaker, whenever ready, give a countdown.
I think is a very good overview of how they are giving this case, which we will be deconstructing one by one. Now, I'll start by briefly reasserting the points my first speakers made, after which I'll move on to rebuttals, then analysis. If time permits, I'll circle back to the rebuttals. First point, we talked about the extraordinary circumstance that is existing. Virtually no engagement on this. They did not acknowledge that yes, such said circumstance exists and it needs to be fixed. So we take away this point by default. We talked about how there is a power structure existing and how the power structure needs to be deconstructed. Again, they simply did not acknowledge it and talked about how police is going to fix everything, which is a very ideal paradigm, and again, not a sustainable one, which we'll come to later. We also talked about the status of minorities and how said minorities cannot, access the justice system that they're trying to provide for them. And again, virtually no engagement in any constructive. They just kept talking to themselves in the past two speeches, and that's why we take this point away by default. Now let us first establish what the burden on our side of the house was. Our burden was that the balance of probabilities is a better metric than beyond reasonability of doubt for adjudging high crimes against minorities, which I believe we have proved sufficiently well. I would now like to move to the rebuttals. Okay. The first rebuttal that the first point they made was that morality will start affecting law, and that this method that is pre-existing, the status quo for that matter, has not changed in a very long time. That is the problem. This problem has existed. High crimes, such places exist because the status quo has failed. So by saying that no, the system has been around forever, it should continue, you are basically reasserting a point. Thank you so much, opposition. They talked about how morality will start affecting the law. We did not talk about removing the system, we're simply amending it. We're not superseding it. There's a fundamental difference, and if they're taking the pain to listen to our first two speeches, they would have understood this. We also talked about how crimes will be solved faster than this, and that should not be the end goal. It should. Our primary stakeholder in this is minority communities, and we're not even viewing this with their in mind. Let us understand, we are trying to look at minority communities through a judicial perspective. So we need to understand faster deliverance of justice, and the removal of said circumstances is a more important goal for us to pursue, and that is why we take them. They talked about how the accused's rights are violated, etc., and all of that nonsense. Again, this harm exists on those sides too. You cannot say that on your side, the status quo, that is, people are not wrongfully prosecuted. In fact, if you call that a miscarriage of justice, the deliverance of absolutely no justice is also harm that is existing on your side, which you are simply not able to address. What you are proposing, your so to say counterfactual, is the status quo. You're not talking about how you will amend it. You come and say, no, police ko fix kar do. How do we do that? You're not giving a model. You don't have to, but you're simply not telling us about how you plan to implement what it is you are proposing, and that is why what you are proposing to solve the issue is the problem itself, which is an absolutely absurd argument to make. They talked about fundamental rights and how it will be abused by minority communities. Let us understand that it is the burden of a balance of probabilities. When I talk about someone just coming up here making any accusation going, there are checks and balances. More severe the crime, more evidence is required. Please read the context. But yes, let us understand it is not something that is happening on its own. It is not arbitrary. There is a due procedure of law which we are just amending for better results. They talked about how it is a systematic problem. It can only be solved in a systematic way. I do not understand how that point stands. It is a systematic change in a system that is pre-existing, in a system that is flawed, and so we take away this entire point. They talked about how it is stigmatizing the victim, which I agree. Yes, it is. It is setting a positive deterrent. I will come on to why wrongful accusations are still not a wholly undesirable outcome, which we will come to back to later. But yes, stigmatization is very good. Why? It acts as a positive deterrent, and it does more good than harm. The DLO walked up here and talked about how social justice is flawed. How do you plan to rectify said social justice? You say that it doesn't work on our side. We give a model, we tell you how it will work, or we tell you how it will work, where it will work, how long it will work. You just say no, it won't work. How is that an assertion? You cannot just come up here and make an assumption and leave. That is not a convincing enough argument. You talked about how crimes will not be stopped. That is again an assertion. We have given a more than convincing model which you simply fail to acknowledge or engage in. You talked about improving police. At what point did we say don't improve police? Since when are the two mutually exclusive? Improve your police, take your time. This is not the motion. If the motion included police, we would make it our burden to tell you how we'll improve the police. Stop making absurd arguments which actually support our side, which we actually thank you for. They also talked about how the police system and jurisdictions is fucked. Yes, it is. But let us focus on the motion at hand. Minority communities making wrongful assumptions is still not something which is more harmful than the people who are harming them getting prosecuted. Why? Wrongful prosecution happens against an individual, as my DPM also said. These crimes are happening against a community. Why is this community an important stakeholder? Because they're oppressed by pre-existing systems, by pre-existing state machinery. And that is why we understand that these people need to be prioritized. Fine, a crime against an individual. Yes, there was a miscarriage of justice. But there is always going to be a conflict of rights which needs to be addressed. I would now like to move on to the analysis. There was one question, status quo versus the balance of probabilities. I think we take this debate because we've established well enough that the status quo, that is the beyond reasonable doubt, is simply not a sustainable model. It will just reassert the same faults that were existing before. And they harped on and on about the rights of the accused. Let us understand, the freedom of the accused as opposed to the right of equality of minority communities, which is a more pressing concern, which is the primary stakeholder in this debate, and I think it is the latter, and that is the way to take this entire clash away. They talked about how minority rights are, no. They talked about how minority rights are not respected, but again, we established that is a more important burden for us to talk about. as I told again, I will reiterate, the burden was to simply prove the balance of probabilities is a better metric than the beyond reasonable doubt, which we have proved. They had to walk up here and tell us why the status quo will solve the extraordinary circumstance of high crime against minority communities in an effective way, which they simply could not. They just kept giving us a counterfactual, so to say, which actually supported our case. Now, the important stakeholders in this one, justice system, the judicial system, which aims to deliver justice. On our side of the house, we're giving them a system, while amended, will not go on for long, has checks and balances, and will come back to the status quo. The very status quo they love so much, which is not a permanent change. And that is why the justice system is benefited the most. The minority communities and the issues they face, that will be addressed the most, in the most fast, in the most urgent way, which again will elevate the problem and comes back to the status quo that they so like. Let us analyze the two paradigms. The status quo on what they propose is that the status quo pursues the beyond reasonability of doubt, fixes some issues in the delivery for justice, but it still has the same fault of pre-existing structures. For lack of engagement, we simply cannot talk about the police or the accused, and that is not a valid point to make. And eventually, you will fail the minority communities. In our paradigm, however, the principle of balance, that is the balance of probabilities, is with its various checks and balances, with its time, with its constraints, elevates the problem and benefits said minority communities and every single stakeholder, including the justice system or whatever accused, whatever they're bringing, because it is having checks and balances. Again, I reassert that because it simply doesn't seem to get to them. They would rather make us, preserve a superficial change in the justice system and at the risk of wrongful prosecution, right? We agree. There is a risk of wrongful prosecution, there's a risk of no prosecution whatsoever too. So again, the harm exists on both sides of the house. They would rather preserve the status quo and talk about how they will change X, Y, Z factors which are not related to the motion and alleviate the same problem which exists. We, however, would like to bring a change, an amendment with its various restrictions again, which will help us address the motion at hand and solve the problems, which will help us come back to the very status quo that they glorify so much, and that is why we are very happy to propose. Thank you.
I thank the judges for the very fine speech, and I now invite the opposition whip to conclude their case from side. Opposition, here. Peter, whenever ready, give a countdown.
Am I audible well?
Yes.
Hello everyone, I'm Samridhi. I'll be the opposition whip for the day. Prefer gender pronouns she and her. POIs preferably after the 5th minute. Please do not heckle. I'll be starting my speech after a countdown. Three, two, one, start. Panel, it is imperative for us to understand today how they have done what every government in the world does. They have come up here and told us that, hey, listen, we can't fix our system, so you change the entire perspective of how you view the system. And that is exactly where they went wrong, panel. My speech today will have the following structure. First, explaining to them as to what balance of probabilities and beyond reasonable doubt actually is. Because I really respect them for speaking 21 minutes without even understanding any of the context in the motion. Then going ahead to say that as to how they have come up here and themselves claimed that the status quo is beyond reasonable doubt. So it is the burden upon them, panel, to come up here in front of you and tell you and give you a unique imperative solution as to why they would change the entire status quo of the criminal justice system. The status quo is working well and fine. Criminals are being accused, are being criminalized every single day. And hence, panel, it is very imperative for us to understand today as to how they have to give us a very unique and imperative solution, which is their burden of proof, in order for us to convince you to change the entire adjudication system of these geographical locations that you very much harped upon during your entire course of your speeches. Firstly, panel, balance of probabilities. What is that? For example, if there's a higher chance of me committing the crime as compared to me not committing the crime, I will be put behind bars. That is what balance of probabilities is, just by the way. Secondly, what is beyond reasonable doubt? There has to be an airtight circumstances leading up to me to say that, hey, listen, I have committed the crime, and there are no other variations that exist to it. And hence, obviously, it is a more airtight model. Obviously, it gives more social justice, because they kept harping upon the fact that as to how we don't offer any solutions, we don't lead to any stakeholder analysis. I'll give you 5 of them, panel. Firstly, coming to the accused. Both of my first speakers have already spoken a lot about the accused, so I won't harp much upon it. But they keep talking about social justice, panel. Social justice is much better on our side of the house, because when they're talking about faster delivery of justice, when they're talking about faster adjudication. Social justice does not harp upon by putting innocent people behind prison panel. Social justice does not come from faster deliverance of social justice system. It comes up from better and actual deliverance of the social justice system. We want better delivery of justice, not faster delivery of justice. Panel, note that. Secondly, we also talk about, since these are based in the geographical locations of high crime rates against minorities, there is more chances of errors occurring. There's more chances of accusations coming up, and hence, since there's more chances of errors occurring, and you pointed out that apparently there's a very big chain between the adjudication process and the crime happening, which is unlikely from the course of your 3 speeches, because they absolutely had zero chain in front of them. Because the chain is very long and very high, panel, note that there is a higher chance of errors happening because of the chain. Note that there is higher chance of accusations and higher chance of innocent people going behind the prison panel, and hence it is very imperative for you to note today that our model is obviously use stakeholder analysis, coming up to how it is better for social justice, coming up to how it is better for the minority, which you obviously pointed out that you missed, but we did not miss because apparently the whip does the stakeholder analysis, just by the way. Secondly, coming to how it is much better for the minority, because if I belong to the minority community and my justice is being served, I would want the actual accused to be going behind bars instead of in a smaller duration of time, any random person who comes and apparently they might have committed the crime, so you put him inside prison. I want the actual accused who committed the crime to go behind prison, even though it takes him a little more time. I as the minority, I as the victim will fare much better in our side of the house, which is our paradigm, and hence us getting the stakeholder analysis. Coming up to and pointing out the flaws that obviously the model had today, which they obviously had to give us, panel note, they had to give us a very unique solution as to why you changed the entire status quo of the adjudication system, right panel? They had to come up here and tell us that what we have been following for decades, what we have been following for centuries, which is like the beyond reasonable doubt formulation, the beyond reasonable doubt mechanism is wrong on so many grounds. What have they come up here and tell us? That, hey, listen, there's a higher chain between the adjudication of the crime, there is a power structure, they are populated by majority, but actually all of those are our points. If they are populated by majority, if the chain has such a high power structure, the chain is bound to make errors, and if they're bound to make errors, we need an airtight system of adjudication panel. They're actually supporting our stance when they come up here and say that the chain is problematic in nature and the chain is bound to make errors because they're populated by majority. If they're populated by majority panel and if majority runs these chains, there's a much higher chance that these majority populated chains will obviously try to save some kind of accused. The politics will be working in their favor, right? This is what we as the adjudication authority need to stop. This is what we need to restrict and curb panel, and that happens much better on our side of the paradigm because, as obviously proven, we have a better airtight model. We say that you have to prove the guilt of the accused beyond reasonable doubt as compared to a much lesser chances on might not situation, which you have been claiming later, I told after the 5th minute. Also coming up to how they spoke about faster deliverance of justice and how social justice should be served together. They're contradicting themselves because faster deliverance of justice is not equivalent to social justice. When I talk about social justice, I mean better delivery of justice and not faster delivery of justice. They also spoke about how it would lead to reduction of crimes. That is actually a very invalid argument because it would just lead to putting a lot of innocent people behind prisons, which is not equivalent to reduction of crimes. They also spoke about stigmatization. But panel, what they have failed to realize that stigmatization is good. Stigmatization is a positive deterrence, I agree. But stigmatization of criminals are good. Stigmatization of the accused is not good. Panel, we are saying that stigmatize the people whose guilt has actually been proven. Stigmatize the people whose guilt has been proven beyond reasonable doubt. Don't stigmatize people who might have committed the crime, which is their side of the paradigm. Hence, stigmatization is an invalid argument itself. Also coming up to reiterating our side of the house, we had the status quo in front of us today, which the government obviously gave it to us. The status quo existed that we have an adjudication system which is beyond reasonable doubt, and hence the beyond reasonable doubt is obviously a much more airtight model. It is obviously a better model, and it fares much better for all these stakeholders in our side of the paradigm as compared to theirs. They spoke about how it is problematic for just the minority. On the other side of the house, we spoke about how it is problematic for the accused, for the society in general, because social justice fares obviously much better in our side of the house. It is better for the victim and it is better for the minority. Hence, taking away this entire debate today. With that, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
I thank the op-group for their very kind speech. I now invite the reply speaker to take over the stage. Here.
Speech in 3, 2, 1. And let us try to understand why we as the opposition have very clearly taken away the debate, because the harm analysis that we've done, which has been completely ignored by the opposition government the entire time, because what we've tried to prove is how on our side of the paradigm so many people are faring so much better than they are on theirs, which they have completely ignored. Moreover, coming to the a couple of clashes that they had identified, we'll tell you why. Why firstly, we weren't supposed to provide a solution as the opposition, as a model. We were just supposed to counter yours. So when it comes to that, we didn't have to give you a model, we just have to point out flaws in your model, which we have time and again, because we've asked you how it's actually stopping the crimes from being committed, which you never actually answered. We've talked about how the adjudicatory system is not going to ensure crimes won't happen, is not going to create a deterrence, because it can actually end up falsely incriminating a lot of falsely accused people, right? We've told you that you've assumed that checks and balances increase only on the side of balance of probability side, but checks and balances, everything also exists on our side of the paradigm. There is nothing new that you bring in with the balance of probabilities, because checks and balances exist in the system of law in entirety, not just when you try to apply balance of probabilities, right? Moving on, you've said that there's a community of community of minorities that you have identified, which are always wrongfully accused. All we're saying is there's a community of wrongfully accused people as well, whose rights are being curbed and whose rights you're trying to conveniently deprioritize as compared to the rights of the minorities. Their side of the paradigm panel is literally saying that the risk of no prosecution is higher than risk of wrongful prosecution, which we obviously do not agree to, because on our side of the paradigm, we're completely maintaining, we're balancing both of the sides. Moreover, we have tried to prove that the power structure that they went on harping upon also exists even with the balance of probabilities being put in place, right? The power structure is not only unique to them or only unique to us. Power structures can also lead to criminals who are minorities themselves being wrongfully accused. Moreover, they've said that since there's no persecution happening, there's no deterrence in nature to stop the crimes. We need to hurry it up. There needs to be an urgency that is created. We need to find an easy solution, which is literally them trying to say that fast justice is better than actual good justice, which we obviously as side of opposition do not approve. They've said that we fail to look at a lot of the other factors that take into place, like needing of evidence, etc., etc. Or when you have to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt, you also need evidence. You need just the same things, probably a higher stake than you do at balance of probabilities, which you as a side government have completely ignored and assumed that whatever you have to prove in balance of probabilities doesn't have to be proved on balance of reasonable doubts, beyond reasonable doubt. Moreover, they try to say that minority rights always trump any other accused rights, criminal rights, etc., etc., etc. All we're trying to say is the alienation can be stopped through other means. There's no requirement to change the mechanism of adjudication, which they constantly harp upon as being the only solution to stop crimes, which also they didn't tell me why crime is actually being stopped in their side of the paradigm, while also demanding me for a model when I didn't have to give one. Moving on, they said that the temporary model is supposed to be there only for a small period of time. So only for a small period of time, they're actually going to wrongfully accuse people because they want to start supporting minority rights. So in that dynamic nature, in that temporary period of time, they're okay with violating so many people's fundamental rights only to give minority rights their particular thing. This is why we find so many faults in their temporary model, which is supposed to be dynamic, which on their side of the paradigm is harming wrongfully accused people, is harming society at large, whereas on our side of the paradigm, we're balancing the victims, the wrongfully accused, and the proper society, which is going to be affected if this balance of probabilities is going to be taken into place. This is why we're very proud to oppose that a fast-track solution that they're suggesting through change of adjudication is going to be more harmful to society at large as compared to any other. Very proud.
I thank the reply speaker for their fine speech. I now invite the reply speaker to take the stage. Here. Speaker, whenever ready, give a countdown.
And an audience, they were not listening to our debate, so we hope you listen to that debate. They have mentioned the word hard more times than they brought up any single point in their argument, right? We need to understand that the whip came up over here and whipped out a lot. When they say they got up a whole new principle in their whip speech, where they talked about the separation between the executive and judiciary. We can't engage with that, it's a whip dumping. They engage with the model for the first time. They engage for the first time about the model on balance of proof. On the whip speech, when they talked about, but they again fail to understand the fact that when there's a stronger accusation, court is less likely to believe there is requirement of more evidence, right? Their whole argument on faster justice system is not better than better justice served came in the whip speech. We should not engage with that at all. The whole concept of stigmatization of criminal versus accused came in the whip speech. We should not engage with that at all. The reply came here and said, they have not engaged with the harms of the analysis we have given. We can't engage with it. It came in the whip speech. I'm coming out this for the first time. Then they also came up here and said that in this opposes motion, they are not supposed to give a model. They need to understand that when you're comparing two things and you're telling your thing is better than ours, you need to give us a mechanization on how you'll implement it. You have not told us how you'll make the police system better simply because of the fact that you can't. Okay, let's understand they spoke about how their status quo is a very airtight model. The airtight model has two small holes from where a lot of water leaks out. The first water leaking out is in fact the fact that crimes are happening. Let's analyze the minority, the accused, the social justice system and justice system at large. When they talk about accused, right, to them the most important stakeholder in this debate are the minorities with power who commit crime and who might be wrongfully accused, right? Let's talk about the two things over here. That one, we have checks and balances in our system. We have that when there's a higher accusation, you need to provide more proof. Courts are less likely to believe it. They didn't engage with it at all in all their 4 speeches. I only have 1 speech to engage with most of their points, right? The second thing is that they spoke about exception. They ignored the fact that the whole exception which exists in the judicial system, that people are unjustly punished, it exists on their side of the house as well, okay? So they conveniently ignored that. Second person, let's talk about minority. To us, the most important stakeholders in this debate, because it's set in the place where high crimes against minorities happen, right? We need to understand that the whole debate was based on the assumption that all adjudication will be wrong, panel. We need to understand that you need to show proof for someone to be criminalized, right? Panel, the judicial system is not that, oh, you are a minority, oh, you are from the majority, go to jail. The judicial system does not work like that, panel. They need to understand the realities of the game. It's okay. We also need to understand that they said that the chain is spoiled, right? When they say the chain is spoiled, panel, we need to understand that we are giving an end to the mean, not the means in itself. They are trying to give us a means by telling that we'll rectify the police system, you should rectify the police system. But when we tell them it's not possible to rectify the police system simply because it's filled by people of majority, it is not possible to suddenly funnel the whole minority group into the police system because they're a minority. No engagement on that. All this is rectify the police system. Panel, the whole concept on that more prosecution is not good prosecution. Panel, it's not the our model does not talk about more prosecution. Our model talks about prosecution happening to people who were not able to reach the justice system because they didn't have proof. Why didn't they have proof? Panel, my Prime Minister and I have brought in my speech countless number of times that there exist barriers between people and justice. When we talk about, so we are winning the stakeholders on one minority. Second, accused, they want, the most important stakeholder is accused, panel, but every single harm they harped about exists on our side of the house as well, panel. I think I've harped about enough in my debate. With this, I'm so proud to